We begin in Bolivia, where two army leaders have been arrested after what the President Luis Arce is calling an attempted coup. On Wednesday, soldiers and tanks swarmed Bolivia's government buildings, with one tank trying to break down the door of the presidential palace. The army chief who led the movement, General Juan Jose Zuniga, had earlier been dismissed after making inflammatory comments about Bolivia's former president, Evo Morales. He said his goal was to defend democracy, but he also claimed that the current president had asked him to stage an uprising. Shirley Sitbone has more.
Here is the first detained criminal, Mr. Juan Jose Zuniga Macias.
This is how the day ended for General Zuniga, the former head of Bolivia's military. Wednesday afternoon, he ordered troops to take over the presidential palace. This image of an armored vehicle ramming one of the palace's doors illustrates the first moment of the apparent coup. Meanwhile, the general addressed the press for the first and last time.
The armed forces intend to restructure democracy, to make it a true democracy, not of a few.
The general was referring to former President Evo Morales, who was ousted in 2019 and said he would run again next year. This has built up tensions in the country, which is facing political uncertainty and an economic slump. During Wednesday's apparent coup, President Luis Arce and his administration were holed up in the palace.
We need the Bolivian people to organize against the coup d'etat in favor of democracy.
The general only stayed a few hours in the palace before soldiers were seen leaving the plaza and police forces taking over. The generals involved in the coup were arrested and replaced.
Well, this apparent coup attempt comes in a complex political context. To help clear it all up, we can speak now to Marieke Riethof, a lecturer in Latin American politics at the University of Liverpool. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Just first, what do you make of the events of the past 24 hours? Was this really an attempted coup, or is there something more complicated than that going on?
Well, I think the general, the coup leader Zuniga, is typical of some of the opposition movements in Bolivia, in that they're concerned about a potential future presidential run of Evo Morales. And that follows, in a sense, from the political crisis in 2019, when Evo Morales was removed from power and then replaced by Janine Áñez. It seems to me, looking at what happened, that he didn't have, other than some sections of the army, he didn't have widespread support. So a real overthrow of the government would have been unlikely in that situation.
And what do you make of his kind of claims that the current president asked him to stage some sort of uprising?
That sounds unlikely to me, actually, because there is among the current ruling party, the MAS, strong support for electoral government and respecting the results of elections, despite debates about whether Evo Morales will run again. So I don't think there's a situation like what has happened in other countries, that Luis Arce himself is trying to subvert the democratic process.
And you mentioned the political crisis of 2019 with Evo Morales. Can you go back and explain a little bit more about what happened then and how that continues to influence Bolivian politics now?
So when Evo Morales was removed from power in 2019, there were criticisms both of his government, how he had handled the economy, politics, and of his plans to stay in power for more than the constitutional limits. And as a result of that, building on years of protest, there was a coup against him, or he was removed from power, depending on how you look at it. And as a result of that, there was an outbreak of violence. So many protesters were killed. There was police violence as well. And that was a very unstable situation. And the crisis in 2019 certainly has lingering effects today because the same sentiments still exist. Because various opposition figures are now in prison, including the interim president who replaced Evo Morales. The opposition is also fragmented and in that sense trying to let's say, attack the presidential balance as what happened yesterday might look more like a last-minute attempt to change the course of politics in Bolivia.
And the ruling party is also divided. Can you talk a bit about the relationship between the former President Evo Morales and the current President Luis Arce?
So Luis Arce could be considered kind of a protege of Evo Morales and someone who Evo Morales mentored in his political career, but he also has his own political agenda. And recently, there have been some disagreements between the two, the Morales and the Luis Arce camps in terms of policy making, and also very importantly about who is going to run in the 2025 presidential elections, whether that's going to be Evo Morales or Luis Arce himself. Morales is currently banned from running in the elections, so there's a big question mark about whether that will happen or not. But interestingly, yesterday, the supporters of the ruling party, MAS, did rally behind the elected government, overcoming to an extent their disagreements. And of course, what that brings in the future is less clear.
And can you also give us some of the economic context in Bolivia? Because the country is facing an economic crisis right now as well.
Yes, that's right. So there's been criticism of Luis Arce's handling of the economy, and part of that is a wider economic crisis that cannot necessarily be controlled by the government. And another issue is the handling of natural resources like lithium and others like gold. Who owns those and who in Bolivia benefits from the export of these natural resources? And there are also conflicts around these. So the question is what the priorities are going to be in Bolivia and who controls this agenda in a situation that's pretty difficult for the government to keep a handle on.
Yeah, lots of questions ahead of Bolivia's next election in 2025. Marieke Riethof, thank you again so much for your insight today. That's Marieke Riethof, a lecturer in Latin American politics at the University of Liverpool.